Welcome to If the Walls Could Talk in Buffalo podcast with Don Purdy, former member of the Buffalo Bills front office, 27 years, and Josh Cormier, a member of the coaching staff under the Wade Phillips regime. And we are here, as always, to talk with you about the Buffalo Bills of 1990 and, of course, 2022.
Okay, we are privileged to be joined by Don Beebe. A Bills fan favorite. He was a third-round pick by the Bills in 1999 at Chadron State. Made an immediate impact as a rookie, as one of the fastest players in the league, an integral piece of the Super Bowl seasons, including several memorable signature plays, which we'll talk about. Don did go on to win a Super Bowl with the Packers. Bills fans have all said they were happy for him. More than one guest here has said that. Currently, he's the head coach of Aurora University. In 4 seasons, his Spartans have a 31-7 record, including 4 conference titles, advancing to the NCAA quarterfinals this past season. Don, thanks for joining us.
It's a pleasure, guys. Thank you.
All right.
See, Don, I think that our Don here had a story from last night that you guys talked about.
Okay, I think we got to clear something up. So, Don, we had a message exchange where about a situation you found yourself in. I suggested maybe there's some drugs involved in play, which you didn't confirm or deny. So I don't like to start rumors, so I'll let you kind of defend and explain what's going on since last night.
You mean when I blew my back out, or?
Yes. Yes. What happened?
Well, I'll try to make this story short as possible, but I was a head coach at Aurora Christian High School. I took the job in 2004. And we got into the playoffs, it was probably in 2009 or 10. And the trainer didn't show up for the playoff game. And there was only one guy that could tape ankles. That was me. Thank you, bud. So I had to tape probably 20, 30 guys' ankles. And I was at a 90-degree angle and never had a back issue before. And I slipped 2 discs and I fell to the ground so hard I actually slightly fractured my 4th vertebrae. And I couldn't even get up. I couldn't stand up for 20 minutes. And we had a game to go to, a playoff game. So I finally just told my staff, just get me to my feet. We took 2 rolls of, athletic tape. I taped it around my whole stomach. And I walked 6-inch steps all the way out to the field and coached the game. And from that point on, I've had a chronic problem with my back. And yesterday at work in the morning, I slipped my disc again, bending over just to get something. And, it just drops me, so I'll be okay though.
Okay. Was that the most pain you've ever been on in a football field?
No, it was a lot of pain. I mean, having my leg snapped in half probably didn't feel too good in 90.
That's probably fair.
Yeah, that was, but the thing about that too is, I was just thankful that Frank was in the game at that time. We were playing the Dolphins, December 23rd, 1990. And when I broke my leg, I mean, initially it was pretty excruciating, and then Frank just came over, laid his hands on me, started praying, and then literally I was fine. Amazing. I was able to get up in the cart and wave goodbye to the fans. I told them basically I'd be back the following year, and I was. So yeah. But that was initially the most pain I had ever been in.
Yeah, I remember that game we were just talking about. That was probably the biggest regular season game in Bills history up until that point. So we definitely want to get in more in 1990. And but you're calling from Aurora, right?
I am, yeah.
Cool. So, is there any tribute to Wayne's World there? Isn't that where Wayne's World was?
It is, but I don't know how true that is.
Allegedly,
my childhood friend Don lives in Oswego.
Yeah.
And when I told him that we were having you on, he was excited because he kind of follows the Aurora football team. Have you been to the Anchor Bar there?
Yeah. Yes, I have. It's brand new. And it's pretty good. They got some good wings. So it's not quite Buffalo, but they're getting there.
There you go.
Wow.
So one thing that I kind of always like to ask, all the former players that we have on is if you could take me back to draft day and, how draft day is different, obviously in 1989 than it is today. What are your, memories of draft day? How different was it than, the guys drafted now? Where did you find out? And did you find out in real time or after the fact?
And we remind fans there were no cell phones back then.
Yeah, that's true. So that's a great question. Yeah, I remember it like it was yesterday. So I played at Shadron. So that's in the middle of nowhere, like the end of the earth, place 8 hours northwest of Omaha on the other side of the state. I always tell people it's about 2 hours south of Mount Rushmore in South Dakota. So, I'm out there, and we're in me and my wife were renting a house at that time. We were married my last year in college. And it was about, 800 square feet. It's pretty small. And we had 21 people from Chicago area out there at draft day. I was told that I was going to go from the second to the fourth round. I had no idea. To be honest with you guys, I didn't even care. I just knew that God had a place for me. I had no idea where that would be. I was never nervous at all. I didn't have a pick. And I just sat there on the couch pretty much most of the day. And at the end of the day, back then they did the first 3 rounds on first day. And the phone rang, and I picked it up, and it was Nina, who used to be the secretary for Bill Polian and Marv. And so I had a few words with her, and she says, Coach Levy would like to talk to you. And I said, and he got on the phone. He said, hey, Don, how you doing? Just want you to know we just took you with our first pick in the 3rd round with the Buffalo Bills. And, man, I was just like, man, what an honor. And I've always said this. If I was to do it all over again, man, I would have never picked a better place than Buffalo. I mean, it was absolutely the time of our lives with a bunch of great guys, the best community in professional sports by far. And the just the organization. I mean, Mr. Wilson and Polian and Levy and John Butler. I mean, you guys know the names. I don't have to repeat them all.
It's funny with Nina though. I think you're the first person I've heard say that they picked it up and it was Nina. It's interesting. As Marv's personal secretary, but she was more than that, and she worked with Nancy Herman. But that's great.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Dan. So, do you? I like to ask the guys from the smaller colleges. I asked Jamie Mueller this. What? When did you know? So you get drafted. You're coming from a real small town, small college. Were you nervous at all that you were NFL ready? How long did it take? Was it your first practice at minicamp? Was it your first day there? Was it training camp? When did you know that you were going to make it?
It's funny. I was so the opposite of all that. I think it goes back to my faith. I grew up in a Christian home, and I have such a strong faith that it really didn't matter. I knew God had brought me that far. He wasn't gonna ever let me down. Even if I would have never played it down in the NFL, I'd have been happy as well. I just going into preparing for the draft that spring, I was just training. I was probably so naive. I mean, think about this. I get invited to the combine. I mean, think about that odds of a guy from Shadron getting invited to the combine. Danny Woodhead, who broke Barry Sanders' all-time rushing record, in college history, didn't even get invited to the combine.
Wow.
And how did I get invited? I still have no idea. What happened was Bill Giles, who is a combine scout, and it's their job to just go all over the country to find the top 300 players and invite them to the show, right? And he comes through, and to his dying day, he never told me what I ran, but his wife gave me the stopwatch that he timed me in years later. I mean, it was just at the funeral. She gave it to me. And
wow.
And the funny thing is, he said, he sat me down at the end of the workout, and he says, Don, I got to tell you, he says, this is one of the 2 greatest workouts I've ever put a guy through. And he had been doing it at that point in time, like 25, 30 years. And he said, I'm going to give you the highest recommendation I can to the people at the combine because you need to get there. Well, I went there and I got invited. And I mean, I flew a puddle jumper from Rapid City to Denver to O'Hare to down there in Indianapolis. I had one knapsack. I had the only shoes that I had were my old ASIC fishing shoes that I wore into the facility that I ran the 40 in the next day. And my right sole, and this is the honest truth, my right sole of my fishing shoe was half unglued. So when I walk, it flopped. And when I ran, it really flopped. And And so I got in there, and my roommate was Mike Barber, and from Marshall University at the Crown Plaza, right across the street from the Hoosier Dome back then. And the concierge came to the door. I didn't know what a concierge was back then, 1989. And concierge came to the door and had 2 shoe boxes, Nike shoe boxes, and said, "These are for Mike Barber." So I walked over, gave them to Mike, and I asked him, "What are those?" He goes, "Oh, my agent sent me, these to run the 40 in." And at that time, I didn't know what an agent was. I said, he said I was probably the only player at the combine that didn't have an agent, which is probably true. And he showed me these shoes. He said, "Man, you can have one of mine to wear." And he was a size 12. I'm a 9.5. So that wasn't going to work. So I just ran the 40 in a flopping fishing shoe. And ironically, back then, remember, no media got into the dome. Okay. So nobody knew really what guys were running. Okay. They only got it when people would come out of the dome and the media would be there. "Hey, what do you got? What do you got?" And so it was actually recorded that I ran a 4.38, but that was not the truth. And I didn't know this until 3 years after I was retired. I went back to the Hoosier Dome in Indianapolis, and I'm training guys for the combine. I don't remember the player that was there that year that I was there representing and helping, but I was sitting there with Tony Dungy and Bill Polian in a box. And Bill looks over at me and he goes, "Hey, Beebs," he goes, "You still hold the record." And I was like, I said, "The record? What do you mean?" Because somebody told me I set the pro agility record. I did a 3.82 or something like that in the pro agility. And he goes, "No, the 40. And I said, "What?" He goes, "Yeah, you ran a 4.25 with Dion. You both ran a 4.25 that year. And that record stood for 17 years until Chris Johnson broke it in 2007, I think it was." But why do I say that? I say that because going back to what I originally said, God had it all planned for me from day one. All I had to do was walk through the open doors. And I did with the flopping fishing shoe and a 4.25.
That's incredible.
Can you imagine if they had YouTube now and you ran or you were live on the NFL Network and you would have run a 4.25 with Dion? Yeah. I mean, you would have blown up immediately.
I know.
You would have been worldwide famous.
Yeah, just because it's not on YouTube doesn't mean it didn't happen. We know it happens. I can't get over that stopwatch.
Yeah,
that was given to you. Where do you keep that?
I still use it. Matter of fact, I timed my Aurora University guys this past Tuesday with that same stopwatch.
Oh, incredible! Yeah. That's great.
That's really incredible.
So you come to Buffalo. Yep. Rookie is in '89. Obviously, the team is on the way up. Just had lost the AFC Championship game. A lot of egos, a lot of personalities. What was your initial impression of that team? Did you feel like it was Super Bowl or bust pretty quickly? Did you feel a lot of pressure as a rookie coming into that offense?
I didn't feel pressure until the first day of minicamp. So first time I ever put on a Bills helmet was May of 1989. Came in for Bills minicamp, and we're doing one-on-one drills. It was slightly raining, so the turf was a little slippery. And back then, if you remember, Don, that the turf slid in one direction. And so if you were actually going in one direction, you would slide pretty easily, especially if it was wet. And so I tried to get off the line against a guy named Nate Odomes. Who was pretty good at that time.
Real good.
And I slipped and fell. And as I was getting back up, he pushed me in my back. He said, "Stay down there, rookie. You're going to be down there all year anyway." So he just whooped me mentally from that point on. I was just toast. And I was thinking to myself, gosh, if I never learned how to get off the jam, I might be unemployed before I ever start. So I remember talking to Scott Burtstow as the year went on. I said, "Man, I gotta learn how to get off the jam, and I gotta hire something." He said to me, he says, "I train with this guy named Gary Costanza, martial art guy." He says, "You need to look into training with this guy." So I did. I trained with Gary Costanza 3 times a week for that whole off season, and I got really good with my hands. And I'll never forget the story. Is the next May of '90 now came across, and we're at minicamp, and Kirby Jackson was coming out to guard me, and I said, "No, Kirby." I said, "Come on, Nate." And Nate goes, "Oh, okay, you want to take me now, huh?" So, you get to know each other, right? And I look at Jim and I put up a fist, and I didn't put it behind my back or anything like that. I put it up in the air so Nate could see me. And that fist means I'm going deep and you can't stop me. So I'm talking trash without even saying a word. All right. And I went right by Nate. No offense to Nate, but I went right by Nate on a go route, and I had been a different person. But yeah, that was my first experience, guys. It was kind of embarrassing, and yet it taught me, man, I better impact or perfect certain skills at this level, or I'm never going to play.
Yeah, obviously you hear about guys developing so much between their first and second year, but usually it's just physically. It sounds like physically, other than maybe the hand stuff, you were already ready with your speed. But yours was a mental growth that you needed to do. Speaking of Scott, I imagine you must have kind of a connection with him, being that he was a Midwestern guy too. Did you know like some of the same people?
I love Scott. Scott's a very good friend of mine. We still talk. He just moved to Nashville area.
Yep.
My son's down there, Chad, and my daughter. And eventually me and Diana will, when I retire from Aurora University, we'll probably retire down there as well. And me and Scott will be neighbors again. So, yeah.
Excellent. So 1989, one of the premises of our program is talking about the 1990 team and this year's team. Yep. Really the only two times that they've ever been a consensus favorite to make the Super Bowl. But it was 1989 leading into 1990. And I'm sure you've talked about this a ton, but I find it ironic that one of your most signature plays was in that playoff game, landing on your head. Don, I remember I was in the stands for that game, and the whole stadium gasped. You were fine. You came back in the game, unlike when you were coaching and you've been over here. You were fine after that play. Yeah. Do you remember that play? And it's funny because, the Pro Set football cards even use that picture of you go, and it was unbelievable.
Yeah, I remember that play. Absolutely. It was my rookie year. And I remember it was right before halftime because we were driving to score before half, and Jim threw me high as he always did to lay me out, but I'm messing with you. And I just went up and caught the ball. Came down and landed on my head, and it tore my neck muscle and knocked the wind out of me. I've had several chiropractors and doctors tell me later on in life that I was lucky and fortunate, and I just always said I was blessed. It could have been 1 inch this way or that way, and it could have been a whole lot worse. I still have ill effects with it. I just go see a chiropractor when my neck just locks up on me. Why my spine is messed up as well. I don't know. I was able to finish that game because I came back in the second half and was able to finish the game because probably the adrenaline rush, and my neck was still warm even though it was cold outside. But I will say this: if we would have played the next week, it would have been hard. I couldn't even lift my head off my pillow for 3 days.
Oh,
so it was rough.
Yeah, understandably.
But it was worth it, man. I'm telling you, what a game that was.
It was one for the ages.
Do you have a favorite game? I mean, I'm thinking 51-3 or the comeback game, or maybe your 4-touchdown game against the Steelers.
He would have been injured for the 51-3 game, right? Because he got injured.
Yep.
In the Miami game.
3 weeks before. But
what's your favorite on the field game, Don?
Okay, let me just say this. I'll say my favorite moment. The favorite moment was I'm in the huddle, and this is kind of funny actually. I'm in the huddle. And I'm at the Houston Astrodome. It's the third game of the season. Now, if you remember, we had Chris Burkett was number 2, and Flip Johnson was number 3, and I was the 4th guy. And in 1989, we weren't going 3 and 4 deep very often. No, never 4 deep. So I never played the first 2 games. Jim goes into Marv's office on Tuesday, day off, and says, we drafted Beebe. We need him on the field. Get him on the field. So they cut Chris Burkett that day, and I'd be slid into the 3rd receiver spot. And so now I'm on a nationally televised game. It was a Saturday afternoon, nationally televised game then. And my whole family's watching and everything like this. And this is going to be it. This is my debut, right? So the first play, I get in the huddle, and it's a run play away from me. Thurman's going left, and I'm lining up to the right. And Chris Dishman is bump and run with me. And he's saying, "All right, white boy." He says, "Come on, bro." He says, "I hear all this junk that you got some kind of speed. I want to see it, man." And he was just being facetious and funny. And it was kind of hilarious, to be honest with you. But I was nervous. I was like, holy smokes.
He was a famous trash talker.
Yes, he was. But he was a great guy. I loved Chris. So it was a run play. So the next 3rd down came on the next series. And we're in the huddle, and I'm supposed to do a post corner going out to the right side again against Chris Dishman. And as we're about to break the huddle, Jim looks at me and he goes, "Beeps, if he's pressed on you, go deep. I'm throwing it to you." And I'm like, here we go. So I get out there. I beat Chris off the line of scrimmage. You've all seen the play. Mm-hmm. And the first pass to ever go my way was a 63-yard bomb touchdown. And if you watch my reaction, I looked like I was skipping like a little girl. I had no idea what to do. Andre tackles me. The whole bench clears. And I get to the sideline and just start thinking about what just happened. That was the greatest moment. The greatest game, for different reasons, the comeback. was the greatest game, and being able to score in that game was cool to be a part of that. But obviously, 4 touchdowns against the Steelers was an unbelievable game. Just got hooked up with Jim in that game, and we just got on fire. And I think that was the second game or third game of 1991 season, right after I came back from the broken leg.
Yeah, I think 52 points or something like that. Going back to the Houston game, what validation for Jim to have that happen? Because if I recall, I remember hearing that Chris Burkett was furious about being traded. I didn't know the story behind it until now. That's really interesting. But
what'd you say to Chris Dishman on the next offensive series?
Yeah, that actually is the funniest part about the whole story. Sorry about that. Thank you. So the next time I get in the huddle, it's a run play again. This time it was coming at me. I go up, I'm lining up, and Chris gets right in my face, and he backs up about 8 steps. And he goes, "Dang, white boy can run."
That's great. You don't have to say anything when you run right by somebody, right? That's good. So I've been trying to think of a way to ask a question about probably your most famous play, and I'm sure you've talked about it 1,000 times in the Super Bowl with Leon Lett. Is your life any different if you don't catch him at the 1?
Yeah, no, I think it is different. I mean, that play changed my life in a positive way. I always say this, that, gosh, 90%, maybe more, of the guys that are retired from the league are never remembered after 5-6 years, maybe a little bit more. And the ones that are remembered are Hall of Famers. But I fit into this unique, position of memorable plays that you'll always be remembered for. And people always say, are you glad and happy that it is? I said, you bet I am. I said, what a way to be able to be known for a positive thing. And to be able to do it in a Bills uniform in the 3rd Super Bowl after another blowout loss, the stage was set. Let me just say this. And again, I know I'm going to go back to my faith, and because you got to know the inside story of this game, because an hour before the game, it was a beautiful day at Pasadena, right? And I'm out there in my game pants and shoes and my half shirt, which is I always wore on my pads that his pain, your gain shirt. And I'm kneeling at the 50-yard line. And it was a very short prayer. And it was a prayer that I'll never forget, obviously. And I just said, Lord, let me glorify your name more than ever before in my career today than mine. And I will be honestly, selfishly speaking, I got up and I said, there's no doubt in my mind I'm scoring the touchdown to win this game. I'm going to do a one-hand stab, J.J. Jefferson catch in the back of the end zone with no time on the clock and win the first game in Buffalo Bills history. But no, God gave me Leon Lett. And I say this to people and they're saying, so what's the punchline here? And I was like, here's the punchline, that if I would have scored that touchdown to win the game, how many people can sit in the audiences that I speak to today that can relate to that? Nobody. But how many can relate to a Leon Lett play, never giving up? Everybody. And it's given me so many opportunities to tell people, especially through this whole crazy pandemic, to never give up, just never give up. And when I stand on stages or I talk as a coach, it's believable because of the Leon Lett play, and that to me, guys, is way more important than winning a football game.
What were the guys' reaction to that play? Like, I mean, obviously you guys just lost, but what did your teammates say afterwards?
Yeah, well, the first guy to say something to me, and my most admired person on that team was Thurman Thomas. It's funny, Thurman, what most people don't know is what a great person Thurman really is, in the sense of his heart and his care and his teammates. When I scored a touchdown, I think Thurman was more happy for me than I was at times, But when I got to the sideline, he was the first one that came over and he said, pat me on the head. He said, Beebs, thanks, man. Thanks for not quitting. And then Tally was another one of those guys I just loved. And then a couple other guys too. But yeah, there was several comments of just saying thanks for not giving up. In a just a horrific situation for all of us standing over there.
Yeah, it's funny. Part of our job here is when we have a guest on, we look for a really good picture to put as the thumbnail. You'll see this when we release the episode. And so I went online, and the picture has to be kind of in a certain way where there's enough space that we can put some wording on it. But there were so many pictures from different angles and frames of you making that play with Leon Lett. I hope it's okay we didn't use it. We used one of you scoring a touchdown against the Jets because it lent itself better to the – but Yeah, I mean, that just kind of speaks to how famous that play was.
It didn't mean a whole lot to me, guys, until you watch my reaction. He knees me in the head as he's going down. I fix my helmet. I'm still not happy, right? I'm walking over the sideline. I had no idea. I was just doing my job. And I get into the locker room, and Mr. Wilson literally walked right over to me. He bypassed everybody. I was sitting in my locker. He's off to my left. He comes into the locker room, and you could tell he was trying to find me. And he came right over to me, and he said, son, he didn't call me Don, he said, son. He said, son, he said, you showed what the Buffalo Bills were all about today, and I'm proud of you. And from that point on, I started, wow, that meant a lot to him. And then I get back to one Bills drive. And guys, I can't tell you, the boxes and boxes of fan mail letters. Every day I had to go down to the fan mail thing, and I'm talking hundreds every day. Here's something that's funny. What was it, 93? I mean, is this 40 years coming up here? Okay. I mean, or 30 years? I don't know. 30 years coming up on that deal. So, and I still, every single day, get at least one letter that comes into the university or House of Speed, the business, or my home, because they find out now where your home is. And that somebody is talking about that letter and saying, thank you. And will you sign this Leon Lett picture? Or it's amazing the miles that play has gotten. Amazing.
Incredible.
I saw when we were Googling for a picture of you, I did see a picture of you and Leon together.
Yes, that
you had signed football. What is your relationship with Leon? Like, what's his take on that play?
Yeah, that's a great question too. Some years later, so first of all, 2 months after the Super Bowl, Sports Illustrated calls me, and they called Leon as well and said, would you be willing to do an article on this play that had become such a big thing in the national media and with people? And I was like, as long as Leon's okay with it, I'll do it. Sure. So we met in West Palm Beach, Florida. I'm sitting in this coffee shop. I'm always early. And in walked this huge man through the threshold of the door. Now I've never met him before, never spoken a word to him. I got out of my seat, walked right up to him, shook his hand. He says, Leon, I just want you to know I agreed to do this as long as there be no physical abuse. And he and we sat down with Austin Murphy, who is the reporter that did the article, and just to come find out what a gentle giant of a personality. I love Leon Lett. I really do. Wow. And then years later, we got together here in Chicago. We spent 3 days together. They were filming a thing that they were doing a piece on. And I really got to know Leon and his family and his kids. And he is the most humble, quiet person I may have ever met. I'm a big Leon Lett fan. Awesome. And you got to give him credit because he could have done what a lot of celebrities would have done. Point fingers, blame, do all this, crying, whine. Why are you picking on me? But Leon just took it all in stride, and he used the same story to sell the same thing to kids, never giving up, but coming from a completely different angle than me.
What not to do. Yeah. I saw on YouTube once, it was a similar thing. It was Dennis Eckersley interviewing Kirk Gibson. Eckersley gave up the famous home run, and I got to go find that. I can't wait to see it. But a couple things, Don. You have a family full of athletes, both daughters and sons. Just give us kind of a summary of what all they've been doing here.
Yeah. I have 3 daughters. Yep, mm-hmm. I have 3 daughters and 1 son. My 3 girls were all tremendous volleyball players. All 3 of them were college players. All three of them were, the all conference, all state, and then 2 of them went on to be all Americans and such in college. And then my son obviously played at Northern Illinois, played 4 years with the Minnesota Vikings. Yep. And his story, I got to tell you, his story, guys, in a lot of ways is better than mine. My story was like coming from nowhere, never giving up. But his story is more about just persevering in life. I mean, you talk about a guy that's been kicked in the gut more times. 11 of 12 seasons, going back to his sophomore year in high school, he had reconstructive surgery and his year ended. He couldn't play anymore during that season.
11 times?
Yeah, 11 of his 12 season that he ever played. And yet he still was 4 years in the league. I tell people that, and they're like, there's no way. And I said, yeah, there's a way. His name's God. And that's all that Chad did. He was the same thing. He just kept his faith in the right area and just did what he could do. and that's all you can do in life, guys, is just try. Just try.
Yeah, that's incredible. So coaching at Aurora, it's obviously you're immensely proud of your program. I've always heard that it for people that were physically gifted, they don't always necessarily make great coaches because they can't understand why their players, like in an NBA, with say it's Michael Jordan, just jump over the guy or whatever. In your case, you might be like, just run past him. But obviously, you were so much more than that as a player in the way you prepared. And I imagine with your Aurora program, what are some of the keys to your success? Not to let your opponents hear it, but but how do you want to frame that?
Yeah, that's again, you guys are asking some great questions. It's basically you got to take yourself out of it. This isn't about me. Okay, this ain't about me winning football games as a coach. I care less about that. What I'm into is winning lives. And when you put yourself into that kid's, be it a high school kid or collegiate kid's shoes, and walk a day in his life, okay, and just make them better mentally as much as physically. Yeah, certainly. If I looked at it from my perspective, Don, and I said, man, why can't you just get off the line and just run by this guy? I mean, it's not that hard, right? But that's just crazy. Or why don't you get this in the side adjust route or whatever that is? So I've always looked at it that way. I'm a firm believer that talent really doesn't win. What wins is character. I get that from Coach Levy. Without question, Coach Levy and Bill Polian, they went and got guys with character that were winners in life. Get this, guys. The last time I was on a team as a coach or a player that was under 500, and this is the honest truth, was my junior in high school 40 years ago.
Wow.
I've been on winning teams my whole life. And I take no credit for that. I just had great coaches, and I know what to do as far as going to get great players and character, because character wins. And I'm always going to stand by that.
One more question before we get to our final segment here. What was it like winning the Super Bowl with the Packers, and how long during the game or how long after the game did your thoughts come to Buffalo?
This was the question that I wanted asked right here, is because
Mike Lotus talked about Don, how happy he was, and spoke for all of us, I got to say.
When the clock, I was on the field, so I was the guy standing 10 yards behind Favre, right?
Yeah, and he handed you the ball.
Yeah, and so I'm looking at the clock, and I'm thinking to myself, my gosh, I'm going to finally win this crazy, stupid game, And I walked up to Brett in the complete chaos that it had become, and I looked at Brett, and I said, hey, do you mind if I have that? And he goes, Beebs, you deserve it. And he gave me the ball. And I walked over to the sideline where my wife and kids were, and that was Chad at 2 years old then. How ironic, huh? And then my daughter, who was 5, and I was able to carry those two kids off the field. Now, NFL Films was doing a piece on me, Reggie, and Eugene Robinson during the time, so the camera was everywhere on me, which is cool because they captured some great moments for me. And people always ask, what did it feel like? And I said, well, to be honest with you, my thoughts went back to Buffalo. I couldn't even enjoy that as an individual person, as a Packer, because I was thinking to myself, why me? Why can't this be, Jim or Thurman or Marv, was one of the first person I thought of. And then Polian and Butler and then really the people in Western New York. I mean, all those times that we came back as a Super Bowl loser and they just showed up by the thousands for us, What would it be like if they won it? Oh my gosh, I hope we see that this year. That would be unbelievable for all of us. And so my thoughts really, it was kind of emotional as I got on the bus, even when I was thinking, reflecting, and just the people that reached out from Buffalo. Oh my gosh, guys, I wish I could tell you how many messages and letters that I received from fans in Buffalo, from Ralph Wilson to Polian to Levy, all writing me letters that they were just so happy for me. And I was like, happy for me? Man, I felt guilty. I'll be honest with you. I felt guilty that it was me and not somebody else.
Yeah, that's you, but you were a fine ambassador for someone that can speak to what it means to reflect on what it meant for Buffalo. So that's great stuff. We're gonna
Well, yeah, we're gonna.
Warning?
Yeah, Don, that was a great answer. And as a kid growing up in Buffalo, and I found myself rooting for the Packers and rooting for you, even though I was a little envious. We were all a little envious that you won, but everybody in Buffalo, I remember, wanted you to win that game. So we're gonna let you go here, but before we do, we play a game with the guys called the 2-minute warning, where we're gonna ask you 10 kind of fun questions and see if we can get it under 2 minutes. So you ready to go?
I would love it. Yeah.
All right, Don, go ahead.
Okay. Your most interesting place now to watch a Bills game?
Oh, interesting. My cave downstairs.
Love it.
3 people you'd want to dine with, dead or alive.
Outside of Christ, obviously, that's my first answer. But, Abe Lincoln would be the first guy off the top of my head. I would love to meet Martin Luther King. And I would like to have dinner with Walter Payton, who was my hero when I was growing up.
Oh, yeah. Wow. All right. So not that this is you wouldn't want this, but if you did want to enter an arena with dry ice, and because what song would you want played?
Oh, the Bills shout sound.
Oh, beautiful. What best concert you've ever been to?
Oh, wow. Cool in the Gang.
Cool in the Gang.
I saw them open for Van Halen in 2015. They were really good.
They opened for Van Halen?
Yeah, yes, because they were local, and they were excellent.
Interesting.
Yeah. When you do come back to Buffalo, your favorite restaurant, and what dish do you like?
Oh, Daniel's. Hands down. Daniel's is the best. And I love their ribeye is good. Their duck is really good. But I'd be honest with you guys, there's not one thing that they make is not good. Not one.
Your favorite cartoon as a kid?
Oh, favorite cartoon. Speed Racer.
Nice.
That fits.
By the way, Drew Hall we had on, and he said we had quickly said, what do you remember your father telling you? The first thing he said was, my dad told me Don Beebe was the fastest person you'd ever seen. So use that for your House of Speed.
Thank you, Ken.
Yeah, a popular food, but you hate it.
Popular food, but I hate it. Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Oh, nice. What was the most annoying fan base or stadium that you were in the NFL?
Oh, the most annoying by far, Philadelphia. Philadelphia, just so you know, people out there, they would read your bio so they knew your wife's name. Now you can imagine what that was like.
Well, they booed Santa Claus, too.
Oh, yeah.
Can you drive a stick shift?
Oh, yeah.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
And last one here, Don. Can you sing us 5 seconds of the Shadron State fight song?
Or Aurora.
No.
Or Aurora. There you go.
That's a no and no. I could do my high school one, but I can't do Shattered or my Aurora University. I don't know those things.
Fair enough. You bring enough to the program without having to sing.
Thanks so much for your time, Don. We really appreciate it.
Fantastic.
It was my pleasure. Thank you, guys.
You so much. Okay, great talking with you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Fellas, listen up. All you ever ask for is an opportunity. You gotta take it. Where else is your better meeting? Right here, right now.
I want to bid you now farewell, but not goodbye.
Thank you very much, Ralph. Today is a bittersweet day for me. Memories, many of which Mr. Wilson has alluded to, flood my mind right now. I'm surrounded by my thoughts and indeed by the presence of friends unparalleled. Visions from a lifetime of thrills keep flashing before me, and yet the future beckons, and I look forward to it with excitement and anticipation. Because I'll tell you something, I'm a Buffalo Bills fan. So I advanced it on that. And we finally came to an agreement and decided to move forward. And so now my time with the Buffalo Bills, in my opinion, has come to its natural conclusion. How do I begin to thank all those who have been instrumental in enriching my life here? Well, I can't do it adequately, and I know it. I can't adequately. But I remember you all fondly and forever. North Fox, so it's an early day. Be sure you get your taping and breakfast in. The meeting tomorrow for all players will be an 8 a.m. meeting. Enjoy your day today, fellas.
It's great because it was a special group of people at a special time in the city. The team that we had really unified the region. And there are still people who think fondly of those things and remember some significant things that happened during that time that were pretty cool.
You see, our fans are great. You know, they come out, they get excited, they come out and they cheer before the game. They're ready to go. And when you see that, when you walk out of that tunnel, you know, right now, here comes the electricity.